Welcome back to a new era, and today I want to show you 5 handheld camera movements for cinematic video. Let's go. So the first handheld camera movement is going to be something I like to call a teleport, but all it really is just a tasteful whip transition that changes your perspective. What I want you to do to have the most impact is start with an establishing shot of your subject, so a wide angle shot. And then you want to whip into a closer, different angle of your subject. Speaking of impactful, while we want our videos to be like that, we don't want our footage to actually be that shaky. And that's why if your camera has built-in camera stabilization, you want to turn that on so your footage comes out smooth and crisp. Now, a lot of filmmakers will tell you to shoot through foreground to focus on your subject and make the image a lot more interesting, which is true, and I fully support that. That's all cool and great and all that jazz. But why not focus on the foreground itself to kind of hide and make a creative image for your subject? It adds a little bit of mystery, you know what I'm saying? And in my case, I actually use the road as a focus point of foreground, and also the cactus in the back to make the subject look that much more awesome. For these particular handheld movements so far, you guys might have noticed that there's a lot of motion going on. And the key thing here is to shoot at a higher frame rate. I like to shoot at 120 FPS so you can get that slow motion and have a lot more control in the editing process. The third idea for creative handheld camera movements is gonna be the concept of letters. And what this is the idea of creating different camera pathways between touch points on your subject. So, for example, let's take the letter C. So you start on one touch point of your subject at the top of the letter C, then create a pathway based on the letter C to another touch point on your subject at the end. And you can do the same with sharp letters as well. For example, the letter A. You can start at the bottom left of the A as a touch point on your subject, go up to the sharp edge on top of the A, come back down onto another touch point on your subject at the end of the letter A pathway. And there's 26 letters in the alphabet, meaning for you, there's tons of room for exploration. As we get crazier and more creative with these handheld camera moves, the key outside of your settings is actually the tension in your body. You wanna have a really nice, firm upper body when you're doing these shots. Particularly, I find myself tensing my forearms quite a bit to just add that extra stabilization and control. But the movement itself that I'm doing physically is guided from my legs and my core. Now for what is probably one of my favorite handheld camera movements is the loop-de-loop. You wanna have 2 items that you could go from out of black back into black. The whole idea of this camera movement is to come out of black and rotate over, but at the peak of your rotate over is where you're capturing that particular moment you've decided with your subject, and then releasing from that moment and going back into black. Then all you want to do is just repeat the same camera movement for different moments, different ideas in your sequence, and put it on a loop. And it should turn out to be this awesome little handheld transition. This last handheld camera movement slash transition is gonna be the in and out, and basically all it is just a tasteful going into black and coming out of black. For example, a lot of filmmakers will say you go into a black sweater to transition out of the same black sweater in a different location or whatever, but that to me is quite boring. What you want to do is you want to go into something, whatever that might be, and then come out from a totally different perspective, but it's from the same subject. And that's just gonna make your shot that much more interesting and that much more creative. The whole point of handheld camera movements and the freedom it gives you is to be extensively creative, right? It's not the idea to recreate gimbal shots. That's what a gimbal is for those stable, long traveling shots. So really take all these movements and concepts I give you. Actually, I just hope it inspires you to be more creative with your handheld video. Now that being said, let me show you what you can create when you incorporate all of these handheld ideas. And mind you, all of the shots in this sequence are handheld. Well, except for the beginning and ending drone shots, but that could be kind of considered handheld, right? But anyways, let me just show you. now that you know some creative handheld camera movements, why don't you try some creative gimbal movements right up here? And other than that, don't forget to like, subscribe. I'd love to have you, and I will see you next Wednesday. Take care.